Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
Back in 2007, it was probably January 2007. You know, you set the beginning of the year goals, the new year, not really a resolution, but what am I going to do this year? And the one thing I had in mind was I'm going to run a marathon. I've run a couple half marathons, and I'm going to run a marathon. So I was just looking around trying to figure out, okay, what marathon am I going to run? And I seized upon Grandma's Marathon. I know that sounds funny, but there's a bar up there in Duluth, Minnesota, called Grandma's, and it's a big marathon. And my sister had a place up there. I'm like, this is perfect. I can go visit my sister in June to go with the whole family, and I'll run the marathon. It's a point-to-point marathon along Lake Superior, and thought this would be perfect. So I'm training, following a regimen, bought a book, training along, telling everybody I'm going to run a marathon. I'm going to run a marathon. And if you've run a marathon, you understand how the training works. If you haven't, just know that as the weeks go on, your distance increases and you have a couple really long runs. And in early May, I had a couple long runs, 20-mile runs or something like, I forget what it was, 21 or something, it doesn't matter. But I went on one of those long runs and I came home and I torqued my back. I'm 6 weeks out from the marathon and I can't even tie my shoes. And I'm upset. I'm upset because I put all this time in and I'm going to have to maybe not run the marathon. And I just kind of committed to myself. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to figure this out. And I didn't run for a month. I didn't do anything for a month. I just let it heal. And I picked up running again about 2 weeks before. And I remember going up to the marathon and just being deathly afraid of them tapping me on the shoulder and saying, "Hey, Frank, you gotta leave. You're too slow." And I was talking to some people, and oh yeah, I walk 14-minute miles. I'm like, all right, I can beat that son of a bitch. They're not going to tap me out. But my point in this whole thing was, I was not going to not run this marathon. I was not going to not run it just because I told so many people, and I was just so committed to. I didn't want to go back and have to tell people, and I did. It wasn't pretty. I puked my guts out when it was all said and done. I probably didn't run for another year. My feet didn't feel normal. I'm a big guy. I should never run a marathon. But anyhow, it was a very, very uncomfortable situation for me. Just everything leading up to it, even before I got hurt. And so that kind of leads me into my guest here today, the author of Hunting Discomfort, Sterling Hawkins. He's all about breaking out of the status quo, and he believes that we can unlock incredible potential within ourselves. And that's really kind of his mission, is to get people to break out of their comfort zone. And, I was referred to him by Meredith Bell, who is somebody I've had on here a couple of times. Last episode just released a few weeks ago. And we were talking, and she says, "Hey, do you know Sterling?" I'm like, "I don't. I would like to talk with him." And so got him on. Here he is. Sterling, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Frank. Great to be with you. Thanks for having me on. That's a great story. I love it. You're living a no matter what life over there already.
You know what? Is there any other life?
There is.
I'm
it
sure.
Doesn't lead to a very good place over time, though.
Yeah, no, I'm sure. I think that's just kind of the mindset, right? It really kind of gets it into your book. Before we hit record, I was, sharing, paging through it. You have the whole section on building a street gang with accountability. And,
yeah.
I just think that's, I guess first define street gang for us, if you will. But, I think people kind of understand accountability. We were talking about, hey,
Yeah.
I'm accountable to myself, right?
Right.
I've got a calendar with X's on it. There's my accountability.
Yeah.
But when you talk about building a street gang, that's a whole nother level accountability partners.
It is. And just to like back up for a second and frame
Sure.
discomfort, like what I'm talking about here is not living an uncomfortable life. Sometimes people hear hunting discomfort and going after the things that scare you or that are hard or doing things like the marathon and like, I don't want to do that.
Right.
Look at my life, my bank account, my relationships, my business. Like I don't need to hunt discomfort. I'm surrounded by it. And my answer is always the same, which is, oh, you're not hunting discomfort. You're living with it. And you're probably rationalizing why you have it. And a big reason why people live with discomfort is because they look for reasons, excuses, and circumstances rather than ways to hold themselves accountable, to your point, with surrounding themselves with people that are, of course, supportive of them, but hold their commitments in higher regard than their feelings in any given moment. Because, anybody knows, research shows that if you're growing in any meaningful way, almost by necessity, you will be uncomfortable at some point along that path. Now, when I talk about accountability and surrounding yourself with a street gang, just to be clear, because I know you probably have some rowdy listeners, Frank, I'm not suggesting anybody do anything unlawful, right? Right? There's no bandanas, no cut glass, nothing like that. It's about surrounding yourself with people that are really committed to where you want to go in business and life and your relationship in any aspect of your human experience. And when you surround yourself with people that are truly holding you accountable, right? We're not talking about drinking buddies or a significant other, somebody that you complain to on a regular basis. This is somebody that's going to go toe to toe with you and say, on this day, on this time, you're going to deliver this particular thing. And if you don't, why not? Like, what happened? Where do we go wrong? Not from a place of making you bad and wrong, but from a place of really committed to your own growth. Like, if you didn't do it, why not? How can we do it next time? How can we grow and evolve and change and pivot and adjust? And what the research shows is when you have support like that, you're not 70%, 80%, 90% more likely to achieve your goal. You're 95% more likely to achieve your goal. It's almost like if you want to do that thing, you better be holding yourself accountable with somebody outside. And by the way, as a team, you're nearly 4 times as likely to achieve your goals. So that street gang is critical to growth. And we just can't grow as individuals, as companies, as teams, as families, as communities without it.
Yeah, no, I love it. I have a lot of people in my life, and I've had accountability partners that have disappointed me because they pull their punches, right? I mean, when I think of accountability, I think of it in these terms. This is what I'm going to do. Yeah. And then coming back in next week and saying, well, I said I was going to do this. This is what I did. And now next week, I'm going to do this next thing. And so I've had people, it's been like, well, this is what I'm going to do next week. And then you meet with them the next week. It's like, well, this is what I'm going to do next week. Whoa, wait a minute here. What about last week?
Right.
I don't want to talk about. Yeah, I don't want to talk about that. I'm just going to tell you what I'm going to do next week. Well, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
And I think good accountability people, partners, people that street gang, if you will, they hold one another accountable. And this is my opinion. I'll let you talk on it, because they need you to be better. What's the saying? We're the sum total, or we're the average of the 5 people we hang around with most.
Yeah.
And if they're not doing it, if we use the gym, if they're not going to the gym, or they're just going to the gym and half-assing it, you're more likely to do that.
Yeah. Well, if you're not holding others accountable, not to some random things, to things that they want to achieve, it's a disservice to yourself. It's a disservice to them. You end up creating this like default doesn't matter culture around you. And when I'm talking about culture, it could be the culture of community, family, business, doesn't matter, but you start to engender that in the people that you're surrounding yourself by, right? Where you all let each other off the hook. Oh, you didn't do it. No problem. Or maybe I won't even check in because I'm feeling a little shy or embarrassed, or I don't quite want to ask you for a third time because you tell me no every time, right? You're starting to get annoyed.
Yeah.
And that's how most groups of people operate. When you start to hold people accountable, you develop around yourself almost a very intentional and inspired, no matter what culture. that really is committed to the growth of one another, to your point. Now, you can do this as teams, right? Like we can hold each other accountable, check in at certain points, or maybe it's just you want me to hold you accountable for something, right? It can work just one way. Accountability is a piece of it, but I don't think it's the only thing. I think some other aspects or roles within your street gang, if you will, that are necessary.
Yeah, please.
Is you need somebody that's going to be like that muscle, that really hardline accountability. And you also need somebody that's going to love and accept you for who you are, exactly how you are. And I'm not talking about romantic kind of love. I'm talking about human acceptance at a very deep level, because if you're committed to any meaningful growth, you're going to fail. At some point along that line, you're going to take a nosedive. You're not going to hit the results. You're going to fall apart. And that's just part of that journey. And somebody outside of yourself that can love and accept you when maybe you don't have that love and acceptance for yourself is critical. It's going to get you through it and remind you that, oh yeah, you're still you're still valuable, you're still a human being, and you can still grow to that thing that you want to achieve. So you need that. You also need some level of mentorship. The tactics and steps that you need to take, somebody that's achieved the thing you want to achieve and can show you how to do that physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, doesn't matter, right? But somebody that has achieved the level of performance you want and can show you how to do it, and maybe even put you in touch with some people along the way. And finally, there's got to be some inspiration. And this can come from a person, it could come from a memory, it could come from experience, but something that like lights that internal fire inside of you, that calls you forward, that's part of you and is important to you as a human being. And as you have those four roles within your street gang, you're unstoppable. You can't do anything but grow.
And these are from the book. I think the four gang members you just referenced, I'll say them by name: the inspirer, the mentor, the muscle, which you called, and then the heart was that, the loving person. And I see people out there, and some, they have too much heart in their network or too much heart in their accountability. You know what? And I find myself doing that as well. It's like, okay, I need to get a hard opinion on something.
Yeah.
And I'm leaning towards, I know I'll get a softball from this person, right? And I have to literally stop myself and say, okay, who's the biggest a-hole in my network? I mean, I mean that in a great sense, but you know what I mean? Who's the person who's going to let me know that, hey, this is BS. And you have to kind of force yourself to do that.
Yeah. Well, and if I can just tweak what you're saying a little bit, when you've got people that are just nice about things, I wouldn't call that heart. That's some level of inauthenticity, right? They don't want to feel good, or they don't want to feel bad in any particular moment. They just want to feel good or make you feel good, because anything else, well, maybe they don't know if you're going to like them after you deliver that hard news or something in that realm, right? And that's what's called avoiding discomfort inside of a relationship. Those people that love you most are going to give you the hardest information you could possibly receive because they love you.
Yeah.
Right. It's a disservice not to do that. And just a personal example of mine, my mom's been a huge influence in my life. She's helped me through a lot of things. I love her to death. And she is that love and acceptance for me. But at the same time, if there's something that I do that maybe she doesn't think is up to par or is a great manifestation of what I'm capable of, she will tell me on no uncertain terms. And she has, you wrote this and I don't like it for that reason. And I know, like, it hurts, but I know she's doing it because she loves me. And that is the level of love we're talking about here.
You know what? That is my wife. I call my wife my tough Russian judge.
There you
go. She'll, I mean, she's nice about it, right? But she'll just, she's not going to pull any punches. I think you need to do this. I think you need to fire that person. You shouldn't be working, shouldn't be hanging around with them. You shouldn't be doing whatever. And you never like to hear it in the moment, but I always, and it does sting, right? I want to just walk away,
Right.
But once I kind of calm down and, my brain stops firing on all cylinders, I'm angry. I realize, you're right. You're absolutely right. Before we hit record, I was sharing my whole debacle with software and everything here. She used to handle everything here, right? And she's just busy with her own corporate career. And I just said, okay, I got to take it on. It's kind of like my modern day white collar marathon, right? I just have to take this thing on. And I'm hopeful she'll just kind of come in and because she's an accountant type, she gets all the numbers and all the ones and zeros and all that stuff. For me, it's so foreign. But I'm like, you know what? I got to do it. I've got to figure it out.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, those tough conversations do not feel good, but they are what makes you better. One of the my pet peeves are all these people online, not so much these days, but back, during the election and early pandemic, we're like, oh, if you don't agree with me, we're not friends anymore. Right. Like I'm going to turn away from it. It's like, well, wait a minute. If you're not talking with people in hard conversations with people that you disagree with or you don't understand, then how are you ever going to learn anything other than what you already know? There's no room for growth there.
Yeah.
Two people that have polar opposite opinions have those opinions because their views of the world, because of their commitments, what they care about, their experience. And if you just turn away, then there's no growth, right? There's just kind of a grabbing on to the things you already know and probably making the other person really wrong about it and being maybe angry, upset, or frustrated. When you turn towards the discomfort of those tough conversations, it's an opportunity to learn something new about yourself, about others, and about the world. And that's where growth actually happens, where you go into those conversations willing to discover something and almost always inevitably do.
Yeah. I've started I don't want to say the practice, but what I've done several times now, and, I know where people are coming. Well, you could certainly see on Facebook where people are coming from. And people kind of know where I'm coming from. I'm not a big poster on those sorts of things, but people know, people kind of know where my head's at. And there's one individual who I'm Catholic. I'm somewhat right, not right in the correct sense, but leaning, more moderate than probably most people, but I just know he's very left. And we were kind of coming into the meeting right after the 2020 election, right? I mean, it's just like, I could just see he was so, this might not go the way I want it to go. And I just told him in that moment, I just said, listen, I like you. We probably don't agree on a lot of things, but I really like you. And if you're ever in trouble, I have your back. I just want you to know that. I don't really care about, I don't really care. And you could just see he was just like so relieved. Because it really doesn't matter. January 6th, we're getting political here. January 6th, I was sitting in my chair working.
Yeah.
If Donald Trump had won the election, I'd be sitting in my chair working. It's really, we make a big deal out of things that really aren't a big deal. And it just creates a lot of problems, just not politically, but just even sports fandom. Yeah. Just stupid things.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
So German theologian and philosopher Paul Tillich has something great to say about this. He says human beings are concerned with two kinds of things, concerned like they're focused on. One thing are the finite goals, right? Who won the election? How many locations can we open? How much money do I have? What relationships do I have, right? Like things that either happen or don't happen in points of time. And we spend all of our time on those things and obsess about those things. But really, it's the other kind of human concern that is most important. And we lose sight of it when we're caught up in all the finite nature of the day-to-day reality that we live in. And he calls that type of concern an ultimate concern or infinite concern. Things that no matter what happens, they can't be taken away from you. Things like love, joy, gratitude, and peace.
Yeah.
Now, the secret sauce to that is when you bring those infinite concerns, love, joy, peace, connection, those kinds of feelings and that experience into the finite moments of discomfort or into the finite moments of uncertainty, you transform everything standing in your way, exactly what you do with your friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's, I mean, to me, it was nice because it's like, okay, we don't have this between us now. I mean, we do,
Yeah.
but just to
Yeah.
know that really, like to your point, it's, it really
It
doesn't
is.
matter. Yeah. It doesn't matter.
Right. Right. Like our friendship, our human experience together is more important than any finite thing that can happen in the world. Like
Right.
that's real friendship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Nice.
we'll get back to that. I think we'll get back to it. We're just kind of in a, you know, we're just in a strange time right now. We're in a really strange time, and it's
Yeah.
not forever. It's, it's kind of like, and I tell people it's like water, right? You have water in a bottle, you can slosh it around. Eventually it finds its level, right? And
Yeah.
I just think that's how people are. Eventually we find our level. So let's switch gears here, if you don't mind. I know you won't mind, but I want to talk about you and your business, the things you've got going on,
Yeah.
how people listening can help you.
Yeah.
So,
Well, to your point, I'm kind of a business guy. Founded my first company, sold it to a group in Silicon Valley where it became the Apple Pay before Apple Pay. And we raised countless hundreds of millions, billion-dollar valuation, right? And I thought I had this whole business and life thing figured out until the housing market collapsed and the whole thing ended up going bankrupt. And it sent me into the darkest, hardest period of my entire life. And it's through some of those more challenging moments that I realized that it's the things we're fearful of, we're scared of, maybe we're embarrassed about. It's those exact things that are our pathway forward and at least have some connection with our purpose of why we're here and having this human experience on the planet. And what I do today is I bring that into companies to help them understand what discomfort is in their way. Is it self-doubt? Is it limiting beliefs? Is it maybe fear of exposure and working towards maybe everybody looking good versus actually having some real business performance? I work with companies to set that discomfort aside and to live true to what's most important to them as human beings inside of the organization. And to do it, of course, no matter what. So, I love working with people. I love working with leadership teams. And what's funny, Frank, is this whole thing started as just a pathway to dig myself out of a hole, like a deep hole I dug for myself, where I'm moving into my parents' house in my 30s, which, just isn't a good look, at least wasn't for me.
right.
And, folks have started to kind of grab onto that discomfort being the way, the obstacle being the path forward. And it's built out the no matter what community of people committed to new goals, big and small, big dreams, life commitments, audacious things they want to achieve in their life, or really small things, right? I want to rebuild a relationship with my friend or my mom or my sibling, and going through hunting the discomfort necessary to achieve it. So anybody and everybody is welcome to join us, to get inspired, to declare your own no matter what, and to check out everything that we're up to at sterlinghawkins.com.
So you say there's a community. Is there like a community for people to join? It's okay.
That's right. Yeah. Anybody and everybody that either wants to check out what the community is up to or wants to declare something for themselves. I mean, we've had people hit new health goals, new sales goals, speak up in meetings for the very first time.
Sure.
Reach out for help when maybe they haven't for, in some cases, decades, have difficult but necessary conversations, travel around the world, start new businesses, raise money, start teams, anything and everything you can find there. And, to me, it doesn't matter how small or how big your goal is. It's that if you're going to do it, if it's important to you, you should do it no matter what, just like you did that marathon.
Yeah.
And if it's not, set it aside, put a list together that says maybe someday, but not now. Separate it and either do things or don't. And that really is what this group's about.
Interesting. Okay. So they go to sterlinghawkins.com, hawkins.com. I'll put that in the show notes.
You got it.
You had also indicated before we hit record that you have some sort of an assessment that people can take. Is that on there as well, or
exactly? Yeah. So in the navigation bar up on top, you can find the hunting discomfort quiz. And why it's important is because what's between you and the results you want is not just hard work. It's not having enough money. It's not the right relationships. It's not anything other than the discomfort that you're avoiding. And as you can understand what that discomfort is between you and the results you want, well, you can do something about it. Now, the trick is usually we've shoved that under the rug, have forgotten about it for years, in some cases, decades. And so what this quiz, it doesn't cost anything, by the way. The quiz is 15 questions people can take, and it will start to unearth which one of the 5 major discomforts that stop us might be in your way. And better yet, the first steps you can take to do something about it.
That sounds good. That sounds good. I will take it. There's my commitment. So
You'll have to let me know what you get.
Okay. I figure you probably see it. I don't know. Maybe not then. You don't see it?
I think if I went to look in the system, I could, but I generally don't try and go see what people's things are. I figure that's for them to work through, and they can share it with me if they like.
All right. Best way to get a hold of you is through your website, sterlinghawkins.com.
That's right. All the social media is there, contact, anything and everything. And by the way, I'm happy to help anybody any and every way I can, personally or professionally. So
the book's Hunting Discomfort, Sterling Hawkins. Thank you for your time. This has been fun.
Thank you, Frank. It's a pleasure.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.